once again. This is Nuance. Thank you all for joining us this week. I'm Mike Scala, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop MC and the chair of BLM Tokyo. And yes, my camera is still bugging out. I guess that's something we got to deal with, but we are here. And as we say, the show goes on. So what's going on, Jay?
I'm doing okay. Looking a little better than you are, it looks like. But yeah, I'm doing all right.
Maybe it's a curse, as we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a minute.
But I wanted to introduce our special guest. We are joined by the new Dayton Towers board president, Thomas Kerr. Also, of course, a cartoonist with The Wave. How are you, Thomas?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us. And I've been such a big fan of your artwork for such a long time, and I'm always impressed how you're able to put that together on seemingly such short notice. I mean, some of those cartoons seem very intricate and well thought out. And I think even speaking to you once, you told me that it doesn't really take you a whole lot of time to do that, right?
Oh, well, since I started at age roughly 23 years of age, I started doing it commercially. I've done very literally tens of thousands of drawings. So after a while, you kind of get quick at doing it. You get to know your time frame, and the subject matters have kind of a written in, I guess you'd say, cache of visual symbols that I can just tap on. Like if you say Democrat, donkey. If you say Republican, elephant. If you say America, perhaps Uncle Sam, but also perhaps the Statue of Liberty. Then from that point forward, that's the hard part, is coming up with a worthy idea and then following that, cobbling it and fashioning it into some sort of touchstone that people can look at and immediately glean what the thesis of the story is. So, and like I said, I've got a bit of mileage under my experience, so I'm able to draw pretty quickly. And it's a lot of fun to do. I always enjoy the writing and reading and working with various authors. I've worked from everyone from Woodward and Bernstein to Kurt Vonnegut to Mark Healy at The Wave.
Excellent. And speaking of donkeys for Democrats, we know that came from Andrew Jackson, who was the first Democratic president. And last week we talked about this book that I picked up called Accidental Presidents, 8 Men Who Changed America by Jared Cohen. And we talked about the oddity that of the 8 people to die in office, in the office of the US president, 7 of them were elected in a year ending in 0. And in fact, between 1840 and 1960, every 20 years, a president who was elected in those years died. And I thought that was strange. And I wondered if the book would talk about that at all. And lo and behold, even though I think Jay said it would not be in the book, it was. On page 2, as a matter of fact, of the book, they talk about this curse, this alleged curse that was put on Andrew Jackson, but ultimately put on really the US in the office of the presidency by a Native American chief. William Henry Harrison, of course, was the first in 1840, but he says every 20 years thereafter, the great chief chosen by the US will die. And this is folklore. I don't know if he actually said this at the time, but it became a story. And certainly it's a very eerie thing that between those years, between 1840 and 1960, every 20 years, like clockwork, a president died in office.
Yeah. Should not mess with curses. You never know. You've seen what was that with the pyramids, with the archaeologist Carter, and people opening up Tutankhamun's tomb and all the stuff that befell them because of supposed curses, and just got to be careful, I guess.
Yeah, it's out of the realm of my specialty. I know that curses are supposedly, if you inflict them, that it takes something from the person who inflicts them as well as the person who is inflicted with it. But and also there are wards against it. I wouldn't imagine that if I were going into a presidency in a 0 year, I might get a couple of charms to ward off those curses.
Yeah, you can't. It can't hurt. So.
Now, Thomas, you're from Canada originally, right? Was there anything like that in Canada? A curse of the prime ministers or anything of that sort?
Their curse was pretty much on the people of Canada. But in terms of like mortality rates, not so much. It's relatively similar to the United States, although it more closely resembles the UK's parliamentary procedures. So you can have votes of non-confidence. I always thought that it would be something that would be useful here when you had a president, rather than going through the trouble of impeaching, you would just simply have a vote of non-confidence, and then you would have another election. Expensive and problematic, of course, but people get the elected official they want.
That seems so polite, right? That's like typical Canadian. In the US, we're going to impeach you and convict you, put you on trial. In Canada, it's like, we're just not too confident in you anymore. So, so
exactly.
That's the Canadian.
Yeah, I think we would, especially with the landscape right now, I think that would be sorely abused. It'd be the votes of non-confidence.
Totally. I think it would be. As a matter of fact, it seems like after the honeymoon is over for every president.
Right.
Yeah, every elected official for that matter.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that would be, I could see in our very confrontational and aggressive politic, that could be very problematic at all levels.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's from my perspective, I've had an opportunity to even illustrate work by some presidents. I think Bill Clinton was probably the best regarded one, and I honestly have never illustrated anything by Mr. Trump. Not a very writerly kind of fellow. But some of the other presidents who have written, I've actually had, like Al Gore, I've illustrated for. He's vice president, but he was a presidential contender, and my sense is that these men are, no matter how popular they get, there's a point where everything kind of turns against them, and it happened to Bill. It certainly happened to I think it happened to Trump pretty quickly, but I think it's also happening to Mr. Biden right now. President Biden, pardon me.
Yeah, that does tend to happen. And I think like you said, everyone that gets into office at some point is going to experience some of that, because when you're getting elected and you're making the promises and the campaigns, people get inspired or get excited about that, but they don't understand that it's not that easy to make happen. Right. There's a lot of procedures, there's a lot of voting, there's a lot of stuff that has to go into it for something to change. And people if they don't get it right away, then they feel like they've got, sour grapes, they were sold a lemon, and, then you get some of that negative.
So I pulled up some artwork here, Thomas, that I just found on Facebook. What are you depicting here? This looks like that's very literally cybersecurity. It's a phone getting broken into by some ill-intentioned cyber criminal, and it's right on your phone. Of course, it's on our phone now, but that's what that's about. It's like a cybersecurity thing. There's a lot of ones and zeros down there. Okay. This one's about mollycoddling criminals. The idea that and this one is about the fires in Australia. Oh, wow. Yeah. See the boomerang.
Koala. Yeah, that whole story got overshadowed really quick with COVID.
I'll tell you, if it's in Australia, nobody pays attention. And the thing is, they're actually very avid readers down under. So it's kind of nice. I got some nice letters from those folks.
Mm. Now where did those, like that Australian fire one, where did that run? That they would.
Oh, that was syndicated through INX Group. So it could have it could have gone to the Australian. It could have gone to Globe and Mail. It's and also online publications these days. And my idea was just to show this burning boomerang. I mean, it's a symbol of Australia.
Sure.
This one is very fascinating. This is about
people and
violence in Rockaway.
Okay.
And you can see they're under the elevated tracks.
Sure.
And this I did very early on. I think I did this one for Howie Schwartz.
Schwach?
Yeah, Schwach. That's it. Howie Schwach. He asked for something about there was an uptick in gang violence, and now it's become epidemic, I'm afraid. with, just the other day, I think a group of kids shooting on a bus, or bus got shot with a kid in it. Can't remember the details of it, but I know there was a shooting.
Yeah.
And it was generally like a once a year thing, but now it seems to be coming up about once a month. But here we see like 3 hooded figures and their faces are out of the hoodies are actually handguns.
Right. And then we're seeing that, unfortunately, in national news this past week. There's been, I think, 2 mass shootings.
Yes, almost 3.
Yeah, almost 3. Were 2 of them in California? Or I know one was in California.
They were all in California.
Yeah.
The 2, yeah.
And kind of, I think it's a little strange, but 2 of the shooters were, one was in his late 60s and the other was in his 70s, which is kind of odd.
Yeah, hard to figure that out. A lot of people just jumped on like yakking about it right away, but we really don't know what went on there, other than it was definitely a mass shooting event, definitely kind of horrible. I must say it's a perennial in my work. I quite often end up drawing, gun images. That's almost I would call it like, a great percentage of my work, but it must be at 1 out of every 50 drawings.
So with your experience in drawing these artworks for media, would you say that there's been you could see a definite change in what kind of news stories that you're illustrating for, or like there's more of something than there used to be, or less of something than there used to be?
Oh, sure. There's been a lot of differences. When I started out, and this is probably around 87, 86, in that neighborhood, that was sort of like the start for me. I think that the media was a little bit more diligent. They were a lot more, I think they put in a lot more sweat equity, mainly because they weren't jumping. They had to move quickly, but they weren't after the latest click. They were, the web wasn't really a thing when I started. It was like a very peripheral thing. People spoke about it, but they didn't really think it had an impact at that point. Now, the idea of a viral posting, a viral meme, the idea of, the tweet that, found its way around the world, it entices people to get that first click. And because of that, it narrows the amount of time that they have to fact check and to, go through due diligence to make sure they're not making a colossal error. And they have made colossal errors and due to this. And there are many people, and you kind of hinted at it, who exploit these kind of things. They're waiting for this kind of thing to jump on a bandwagon one way or the other. Also, because of the media kind of shifting as it has, there's a blurring between, and you had mentioned this specifically, what satire and non-satire is.
Right. So let's get into that, Jay, because I think you originally sent me the story about this organization, but really it's not a real organization, right? But it's a satire or a parody of some sort, posing as a legitimate organization for trans rights. But they were saying that the Aretha Franklin song Natural Woman should be pulled from streaming because it allegedly was transphobic, right?
Right. And that was, that tweet went up and it just kind of caught wildfire. It went viral, with some immediately latching on to, this is the latest in, PC culture or whatever it is. And ultimately, the organization and the Twitter account didn't have a particularly large amount of followers on this account. I think it was like 1,600 followers. And, they posted these parody or joke posts or tweets that they put out. And some media picked it up and ran with it as this was a legitimate organization that was calling for the banning of Aretha Franklin's song. And I think that's kind of the danger here, is that they didn't go in and verify. And even that account, it's a parody account, so we don't know, we can trust or whatever what they say. But they even posted that the person said only a handful, maybe one or two organizations even contacted them to verify this position in this story. Other organizations went ahead and just posted it straight away.
Yeah, I think that, again, you were seeing people sort of, they're making hay out of something because it suits their political agenda. So
Right.
They're automatically, and I think that it's a problem in contemporary thinking to run everything through a political filter before you come out with an opinion on it. If it was satire, it wasn't like particularly good satire. I mean, satire has a range of kind of between, and having been satirical myself almost my whole career, there's a range, right? There's everything from Tristram Sandy to this, to a meme, and people could be intending something. I have friends who make all sorts of stuff up, and sometimes it's inappropriate or sometimes it's quite funny. But if you're not sort of in the trenches having to sort of dole this out every day, you do have to be cognizant of what it is that you're saying, because
Right.
you don't know what will happen. You just don't know, because if you get the wrong news out. I remember some years ago having to do, this is for the New York Times, I got a story about the Central Park Five. And in discussions with the editor and the art director and myself, we said that we should not portray this as a black on white crime. Like, we made this decision. I mean, I think it was actually very forward thinking of us, because the obvious thing would be to do, I hate to pick on the New York Post, but they kind of make some crass, sometimes very insensitive images that then afterwards they just get embarrassed over. And in this case, I managed to develop an image that's perfectly symbolized what had occurred, but didn't blame one group of people for it, because it's the act, it's the sin, not the sinner. And it's a hard, so in that particular case, they believe it was about one perpetrator and the boys were just kind of pulled in on it. And that the overreach was by the prosecutor's office. Mm-hmm. And the image I came up with was the boys were all called, we were out wilding, if I remember the term
Right.
correctly. And so what I did is I drew a lion, it's like a lion rug, and you could see feet underneath it, but you couldn't see whose feet, who was controlling the lion. The lion was a symbol of the wilding, and the feet was a symbol of the group. And but it wasn't giving them an identity. It was just saying that the wilding was bad, not so much each individual. And as it turns out, none of those individuals apparently bore guilt in this particular instance. So, and of course, the fellow who did was, persecuted for it. So, it's hard. And I think that's about the diligence. Like, you have to step back a little bit, and now no one's stepping back. So this is why you get these kind of sometimes inappropriate satires, sometimes. Right. And also satire has to be challenging. It has to be effective. It has to kind of push buttons, or it isn't satire. It's kind of funny.
And it almost doesn't matter. I mean, it should matter, but it seems like in the coverage and how people are responding to this, they're not even really caring whether it was accurate or not. They just want to talk about the topic. And so they're saying, well, just the fact that this seems believable. And then they want to give their opinion, to insert their opinion. They're discounting the fact that this wasn't even a credible group saying this. They want to believe, if that's their agenda, they want to believe that it's real or it could be real. And they're proceeding. I've seen people comment things like, I don't care if it was real or not. It's within the realm of possibility, or it seems real. So I'm going to run with it as if it is.
Right. And I think we're seeing a lot of that these days on everything. And it's people want information that validates their point of view.
Right.
And they'll take it however they can get it. And
absolutely.
Then run to social media and express it. And now they've got, something to back it up, or a vehicle to, express that point of view. And I think with with people, that happens. It's going to happen. But with media, there is a greater responsibility to make sure that what you're getting out there is factual, as factual as possible. I mean, it seems like
people are going to use it to push their agendas, and they're going to cite it as a legitimate source.
Absolutely. I mean, so it's like the media today. The media today is not Dan Rather's media, unfortunately. I think there was a little bit more integrity in that time, or at least, from what we're looking at now, you kind of think there was a little bit more integrity in that time to where we have now. And that's quite dangerous.
Well, it was definitely more accountability. I mean, Dan Rather, if you'll remember, sort of was the tipping point. So he's a good guy to pick for this. I mean, he eventually he was the one who had the problem with the George W. Bush letter, and it ran up just ahead of his second election. And it turned out that it was discovered that the letter was written on a computer. Well, when George W. Bush was part of the reserve, no computers existed, right? Typewriters didn't use ligatures. So they were able to determine that it was a modern forgery. And he actually took lumps for that. Actually, he basically got caught up in it. It is a very storied, in journalism, that's a big story. Prior to that, nobody questioned the media. Nobody questioned Walter Cronkite. Right. Nobody questioned those guys. It was
Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather.
Absolutely. They just came on. You accepted it as gold standard type of reportage. And you can see today we're suffering because of this. Because I don't want to give any notoriety at all, but George Santos. Yeah. How could they have missed that? And I think if people were informed, he would be just another GOP loser. But because people were uninformed, and in his defense, he's a charming guy, but that's not he's also a liar. So you can't, how much is too much. He apparently is the Joe Isuzu of politicians, and as such, I would think that it would make sense that, at least on this one instance, to accuse the journalism of a bit of malpractice here, because I mean that was low-hanging fruit. This guy, you could have vetted him in a casual afternoon, I think. And this is the problem, I think, right now. I think sometimes the media is so quick to jump on, and I don't know why they didn't. And also I can't remember who lost to him. I know it was the fellow who was he was actually. His opponent was pretty big in the Democrat Party. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but sorry, who was it?
Zimmerman,
right? And I'm just wondering if they just thought, no, this guy couldn't possibly, can't possibly beat me. And then they misjudged the electorate, and then boom, this guy, George Santos, is your congressman.
Right. Yeah. And we've talked about that particular dynamic here before. It is sometimes difficult to read a situation like that. I mean, what if it was someone who was just completely on the fringe, who didn't have a shot at winning? If you were the more mainstream, credible candidate or campaign, would you want to even give this opponent of yours any kind of publicity if they truly have no shot to win? Obviously, that didn't turn out to be the case, but maybe that's what they were thinking, right? This guy doesn't even deserve the notoriety we would give him by shining a light on this.
I think this is, you're talking also about the central problem of Hillary's campaign as well. They thought that she was measuring curtains for the White House, and then didn't read, you just didn't read the room correctly. And the polls were utterly skewed, and up their guard. They didn't work as hard, and the result, of course, was. So you got to keep, you got to maintain vigilance, and that's why I think the fifth estate is so incredibly important to the American experience. Also, it's why they have constitutional protection. Right.
But it's why we need, to your point, the media to be honest and do due diligence and to be accountable. You're okay there?
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay.
We had a technical glitch. It's called
Renee, no problem. It's that's
Wire.
That was a curse.
So far, Jay's the only person who hasn't hit the curse.
That was
Yeah.
a curse.
But it is why we need the media to be held accountable and to be held to a higher standard, because people are just so distrusting of it now, and we live in our own bubble. So like we said, people seek out information that validates their pre-existing beliefs, and it's really hard to penetrate that. And so we all live in our own realities, and oftentimes that reality is disconnected from the people around us even. And how do we get beyond that as a culture and as a society?
And the pandemic added to that too. Bear in mind, everybody was quite literally in their own bubble, not just ideologically.
Yeah.
So that, I think, exacerbated things as well.
I wanted to really quickly, because you mentioned George Santos, this might be a good time to go over the poll results from last week, because our question of the week was, should George Santos resign from Congress? And this time it was a Reddit exclusive. I'm trying to test these polls out on different platforms, but we did get quite a few responses here. 89% of respondents saying yes, he should resign, 19% saying no. So you can see that's most likely even bipartisan. And then one comment here I wanted to highlight saying, he's an absolute clown. Don't know why he hasn't yet, when most people will not work with him anyway. I think he likes the glory now. I think he's going to ride this out for as long as he can.
Oh, I suspect he will. Yeah. Well, I mean, he has they unless they have absolutely a distinct criminal charge that they can bring him in on. And I mean, absolute, he's there. You can run court cases by and large, as you know, you can indict a ham sandwich, but unless they actually get an indictment and a court action against him, he's kind of there. And I think people are also, when they go into it, they're thinking, is he worth it? I mean, he's, what I'm saying, it's just that he's going to be marginalized. Definitely. He's going to have no impact. And as soon as the next election comes back, and if I were Mr. Zimmerman, I would just sort of wait and, reapply and run again. And next time you'll win handily.
Well, there are a large number of candidates now stepping up to run.
I didn't know that.
Now. Yeah, it's a circus in the making. Even on the Republican side, I think you see former state Senator Jack Martin's, his name is being tossed around, but there's more than a handful. There's quite a few candidates stepping up for that seat. It's a pretty big seat.
And the unfortunate thing is that, while he is there and like I said, he's going to be more marginalized, no one wants to work with him. That means that during that term in office, the people that he represents are going to be pretty much underrepresented. And, that's not a good thing.
Oh, they're almost disenfranchised, really.
Right.
Sure.
So.
And is this a problem of blindly voting along partisan lines? I mean, I do think that most people who voted for him didn't really know what he was about. They just wanted to vote Republican. Maybe it was because of the governor's race and they voted straight down. But should this be a reminder that we need to be looking, even as voters, more carefully into the candidates that we're supporting?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's adroit analysis. When he came up there, of course, you can't just say that the electorate, lost their minds. They voted the way they did for a reason, and in a large plurality too. They did it because they're unhappy with leadership. That's the only time you see changes of that type. When I first came into Dayton Towers, people were deeply unsatisfied, and they didn't like being uninformed and being left out of the process. And that's what we told them we would bring to the table, is that were we there, they would be included. And we won handily. And since then, we've kept the promise of transparency and, to as far as great a lengths as we could to keep those promises. And I think this is what you saw this time, not necessarily in terms of transparency. Like, they certainly did vote party line. I think they went down with Zeldin all the way.
Right.
But you can't discount the electorate's dislike with feeling that they don't have a say. I think that's what you saw there. And when people get that way, they make sometimes bad choices.
Irrational choices, yeah.
Oh, right. Totally.
Absolutely.
So AJ?
Now I was going to say your curse is acting up. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, just snapped out of it. All right, so hopefully there will not be a curse at Dayton Towers now that Thomas is the board president. I know that you've been very transparent. I've been following the Facebook updates even before you became president, since you joined the board. Every time that something's going on, a board meeting, whatever it is, you let people know what's going on at Dayton. And I think the people of Dayton are very grateful for that. In fact, even at Dayton Beach Park, you have some people saying, we wish we were in the situation Dayton is in, where they can see everything that's happening because we're left in the dark. And so the people do appreciate that transparency that you provide. Now, what are you planning to get out of your term as president of the board?
Well, I know exactly what I'm working towards. Right now, we have a lot of economic challenges. And if you've bought a 12 pack of eggs, you'll know what I mean. But it's for a co-op of our size, which is 1,752 units, you have a lot of cartons of eggs to buy. And we really have fallen into we've come into a shortfall. The lifeblood of any co-op is, of course, the maintenance. And we're going to have to balance our budget. And we also have to project against future needs. So I'm working closely with our accountant and our treasurer, who are wonderful people. And I'm also trying to advocate to make Dayton as affordable for families, working families, as much as I can. The last group of people who I'm very interested in are those people who are on public assistance and on SCREE, which is the seniors subsidy that the state provides. And I don't want them to fall through any cracks. That's kind of a goal. So I guess that's where I'm focused at. It sounds really pragmatic and pretty far away from the guy who draws pictures and does cartoons for newspapers and so forth. But it's a privilege. The people put their trust in me. I am absolutely honored and privileged for that. But also, I know that it's a responsibility, and I dare not blow it. I take the responsibility seriously, and in the end, I want us to have a balanced budget. I think we can get through this without too much pain, but the economy is the economy. I have no control over that, and we're just going to respond to it as best we can.
How have things been working out with the new management company? I know they were replaced following.
That's interesting. Personally, we just got a new West manager. Candace, she's terrific. I've worked with her a few times on problem solving things. Very good. Kathy, who's our main manager, she is I think very focused on our needs on the paperwork end of things. As you know, Dayton Towers was 1,752 units. There's a lot of moving parts. Sometimes they miss things, and I try to advocate for those people who contact me and say, they missed this. I need help here. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but I think the record's pretty good. We strike a balance.
Sure.
And that's, but generally speaking, and the fellow who is basically the main manager, that would be David Barron, is a genuine pleasure to work with. He is respectful. He understands when I tell him, we need this to be affordable. We need this to be he listens to me. So, because, he's just looking at it from a relatively pragmatic point of view. Oh, these are the buildings. This is the building's monthly budget. And we'll call the monthly budget $10, right? So he says, whatever else comes in, I need that $10. Of course, it's a lot more than $10, but he needs it. And then he'll say to me, well, it'd be nicer if I had $11.
Right.
Could I get $12?
Right.
So basically, he is trying to make it as easy as possible for him to keep the budget balanced for us. And I'm on board with that, but not at the expense of the shareholders. So it's a balance. It's a balancing act.
Okay, so speaking on that balance, here's one particular situation that has arisen. I know that in the buildings now you have signs telling residents not to buzz people in if they don't know who they are because packages are getting stolen and things of that nature. Would it be worthwhile to look into installing cameras, like a Ring device, let's say, so that people can actually see who's downstairs, or would that be too much money?
Are people to do that personally?
No, I'm
for
saying
themselves.
for the co-op to do that in every
The co-op has a broad array of high definition cameras, all in the mail rooms. We've caught people.
No, I'm talking about for the residents. In other words, for when the residents, when someone buzzes their apartment, if they can see who's in the lobby before they buzz.
It sounds great. Like there might be a simple solution, but it's expensive.
Right.
To service every apartment. We're looking at solutions. I think that what one solution might be that we have like what you would call a common camera that anybody can pipe into, that is just the portcullis, where you just go in and you press the button, and it's like a common, like a Wi-Fi camera. Right. I think that might be the cheapest solution. We are in discussions about it, but again, it's budgetarily based. So
sure.
When you say, oh well, can we do that? What I see is like, $100,000 expenditure, and we have to get a new dumpster. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
It's balancing act, but
right. Take care of people's fundamental needs first. But I do see that.
I do read our security reports every month, and there's about maybe 1 or 2 buildings a week that have a stolen package.
Right.
But if you look at that as an average, that's pretty low. If you take a look around Rockaway, if you go to any of the Rockaway pages, you'll see this guy took the package, he porch pirated me, and you see a lot of that.
Sure.
And it's absolutely maddening when it happens to you. We've had people have their bikes taken here. We've had people have packages taken. We've had some vandalism. This kind of thing, and it's frustrating. But we can't throw an infinite amount of money at any one of these problems, and after a while the results are diminishing. You don't get the result for the amount of money you spend. So right now, like I have this idea that it's very similar to what you've described, where it's just like you would have it on your phone. It would be like a cam that you see, you can go see Hawaii, the beach at Hawaii. Right. It would be like that, but it would be your lobby door. And
that makes sense, right? Because all of the apartments really have to see the same area. It's not like they all have their own door downstairs. It's the same area that they have to look at.
We are definitely looking into that. So it's not something that is being ignored. It's just we're trying to see who could do that. What's the pragmatic thing? Do we need to put a web connection in there? What's the deal? Like because when you start saying it, then it starts adding up to $100 a building times 7 buildings.
Sure.
Plus the cameras, which need to be tamper-proof, times 7, and they need to be environmental proof because we're in a coastal community. So you're talking like 300. Like before you know it, you're talking serious bread. So, and then we have other things that are coming up that people want too. So it's like I said, it's a balance. But I think that's one possibility that we're looking at right now. I'm more concerned when people can't buzz people in, and people do buzz people in, sometimes indiscriminately, especially, kinder-hearted, older, somebody wants in, they press the button, but generally speaking, everybody has to be a little cagier these days, I think. And we do send notices out, and, in New York City, I was shocked at this number. In New York City, I was reading something, and it quoted the number as 90,000 package thefts. And I thought, wow, that's a lot for a year, 90,000. Holy man. It was for a day. So
wow.
I was like floored about that. So
that's big business then. That's not something small. That could be coordinated effort type of business if you're talking 90,000 packages a day.
I suspect it is, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and to be fair, there is only so much that you and the organization can do. The tenants do have to take some initiative and not indiscriminately buzz people in if this is what's happening in the building. There has to be. You can't fix every problem.
No, it's impossible. It would be a fool's errand, as they say.
Right. Now I know you've been more vigilant when it comes to mismanagement at the co-op. I know going back years, we hear stories about, different abuses, let's say, like large contracts are supposed to be subject to competitive bidding, but maybe they would break it up into smaller contracts so they can give them to their friends. Sure. So you guys have been on top of that and really cracking down on that type of behavior.
Well, the general policy has been that everything goes to competitive bid. everything goes to competitive bid. And that way, actually, you get the best price.
Right.
You know, we've always, generally speaking, right across the board on all our expenses, we've come down, you know, in many cases, 20% off of the price it was previously had, because we were insistent upon competitive bids. When you're competing for a dollar as a, you know, as a company, you've got to come up with a lower bid. So, and they're closed. They go to our attorney. Our attorney then opens them, and then he submits them to the board. There's no pre-vetting or, you know, anything like that. It's all completely blind. And when it comes in, we look at the relative advantages and disadvantages of each contract. I mean, I know this is crashingly boring, but it's really what the board does the most. And after looking at all of them, we don't always pick the very cheapest one, but we come close. And if we do pick one that's a little bit more, there's usually a reason for it. The case in point would be our landscapers. We have landscapers here, and in the summer they do a terrific job. They make the grounds look nice, and by opening it to competitive bidding, we got a terrific landscaper in Dragonetti for much less than the other previous landscaper. Let's just say 20% less, which is about the average. And this year, we put up for bid again, and they came back with another price, and the price was significantly more, but the price of fuel has gone up significantly more. So we looked at the prices, and they won the contract. Now, here's the thing: the price of their new contract is still less than the old contract. So, you know what I'm saying? We're doing our job. It's just that we've also got other things piling up. Local Law 11, as you're probably aware, that's sitting right at our doorstep. We've also got energy costs have increased 37%, and perhaps more as we move into the future with electric energy in the area. And gas has gone up because I think almost every place here has gas stoves. So everything's going up, but the only thing that hasn't gone up is, amenities and maintenance. And that's going to have to start catching up. And it has nothing to do with the previous board or the management, which they primed at the debt pump. There's no doubt about that. But it has to do with factors outside of the range of we have a union contract that has to be honored in April. The union negotiated a relatively large increase for our workers. They have to be paid. That contract has to be honored. So in order to pay those people, we have to raise fees. That's how it works. But we're not doing it pell-mell, and we're not doing it irresponsibly. We're doing it so the building runs and people can still live here affordably in New York.
So what would be your message to the people of Dayton Towers? If you want to leave them one bit of information right now for anyone watching, what would that be?
Well, I would like to leave something like laugh, live, and love. But barring that, I would say that, you couldn't hope for a better team of people working on your side. Every board member knows their responsibility. They're your neighbors. They, like you, feel the pain when things have to go up. And I would say to you, if you feel like something else can be done, we run an election every year, and you can step up and have your say. You will soon find, though, that when the facts become apparent, and we are big fans of facts and truth and the transparency, you'll see that our choices were as tight as we can get. Like, we try to cut as close to the bone as we can, and that's to the benefit of everybody here, all the working families, people who are impacted by this. And like I said, I grew up in a relatively, I would say, a modest, I wouldn't call it poor, but it was middle class, but we didn't have a lot of bread, for sure. And I know what it's like when a family has to cut the budget. And, when we have to cut our budget, it's always an unpleasant thing, but you got to do what you got to do to make things work. So these people you've got I think, a really great, honest board. I hope that all the other co-ops, our board members are also involved in other Mitchell-Lama groups and so forth. I hope other co-ops, also have a feel for that and look out for their people like we look out for ours. I think that's important.
I'm glad you mentioned even the fact that people can run for the board and that you have elections every year, because as you know, that's not always the case on the Rockaway Peninsula. And we've really been putting pressure on HPD now that we have this court decision clearing the way for an election at Dayton Beach Park. We want to make sure that they have their election of directors as well. It's been far too long, several years now, with no
absolutely.
And let Dayton Towers be a model. You can criticize whatever you want to criticize, but the bottom line is democracy is in action at Dayton Towers. And that's the least we should be asking for. I mean, can we have an election at Dayton Beach Park and let the shareholders say, everyone who lives in a co-op like that should have a say in what happens at their co-op, who's on the board, who runs it. That hasn't been the case at Dayton Beach Park. So let's get that.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. And it's the only responsible point of view you can have as a in terms of leadership and in terms of the responsibility that's left to you. You represent, as a board member here, you represent about 115 people, but it's more than that. You have to bring common sense to bear. You can't let petty things get in the way of the bigger, more important things. And like I said, there are times I'm just amazed. Like Billy, our treasurer, is amazing. And he basically works 9 to 5. I also work, but he works. And then after that, he comes in and he does all the accountancy. He's a carpenter. I mean, but he is, he should be a public accountant. Honestly, he's wonderful. And he helps us get grants. He helps us work towards solutions every time. He's a treasure, really. And he feels the same responsibility I think I do. And I think every board member does. It's about kind of making things work as smoothly as possible. I didn't look for this position. Some people look for the position. I definitely didn't. But I know that, as I said, if good people don't stand up, the other variety will definitely stand up. And then you'll find yourself in the kind of leadership that you really don't want to have. The other thing I would touch on is, I don't know if it's it was outside the purview of your description, but I'm looking out the window at Surfside, and I could turn the camera on and show it to people. But as you know, they're looking to increase their apartment count there by 2,000. And to this end, I've written a letter, basically a letter of opposition. And apparently, with any luck, the Wave and the Rockaway Times will be running that. So, thanks, Wave and Rockaway Times, if you're listening.
Well, fighting the good fight, you got to do.
Well, yeah, you and I both know 2,000 additional units between 108 and 105 Street is going to be like, it's going to turn this place into, I don't know what. I don't even want to think about it. But common sense dictates it can't be good.
Yeah, no, and there's no infrastructure in place to accommodate that. We're still trying to get a train to the city. I mean, we're still trying to get our second hospital back. I mean, not to mention parking and everything else, to strain on all the resources here. I mean,
there's just so many years now.
That needs to be able to keep up. So I know you mentioned the big important issues a few moments ago, and Jay, I think you had a big important issue to mention relating to M&M spokes candies.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's a big important issue, but I do think it's an interesting one. So it's in the news. M&Ms have been having some issues the last couple of years, actually. They've been trying to be, or they say they're trying to be more inclusive, and so they've expanded their lines of spokes candies to include different types. And I think the big issue that happened, I don't know if it was last year, the year before that, when they changed the green M&M, which is the female M&M. She had go-go boots on, and they changed those to sneakers. This was about a year or so ago, and there was a big uproar over that. And actually, on the conservative side, there was a campaign to make the green M&M sexy again, and they saw this as some kind of a politically correct movement or some kind of issue. And now we've got M&Ms have come out this past week, and they're getting rid of the spokes candies altogether because they had people and backlash on, I guess, from different angles. And so they're getting rid of them all together, and they're going to put actress and comedian Maya Rudolph as the spokesperson for M&M's going forward, at least for now.
This is why we can't have nice things, right?
And it's kind of that. I do kind of feel bad for her, because I'm pretty sure if you've got such a charged environment or atmosphere, and she's standing in the forefront, just doing the job she's hired to, she's going to be targeted. You know what I mean? It's just kind of it's kind of crazy. I don't get the whole point of it.
Yeah, I mean, and your gut instinct is to say, why doesn't M&M's just put their foot down and say, we're not going to cave into this? But then you have to think about the public pressure that's on them, and they're obviously doing it for a reason. So it must be affecting their bottom line.
But I don't think there was, and again, this is just my opinion. I don't think it was anything affecting their bottom line. We did see,
right? There's got to be a fear of that, no?
Right. Well, we've seen in the last couple of years a lot of companies seeming to try to take the initiative to kind of latch onto or get up to date with whatever was going on in mainstream thought, right? Adding more options or changing things that some people might not have even thought about. Just being either trying to be proactive or being reactive to what's going on. And that's, of course, going to ruffle some feathers from all different angles. And it seems to me that this is one of those cases, like, I don't think anyone was really calling for, the green M&Ms to change shoes or extra M&Ms to be added. But here we are.
Yeah, I honestly haven't been following this so terribly much. I did look into it a little when I got the prompts, and and then I even found that the M&M's people made a statement.
Right.
And to me, it just seems like, the company's job is just to sort of move candy. If I could be wrong about that, but
right.
And of course, candy has like connections to kids, an emotional kid. What kid doesn't like candy, right? And all kids, I think, from the entire spectrum of the American experience, and parents too, by the way, like M&Ms because they don't come off on your hands. If you've ever had to wash your kid's frock,
right,
it's like, that's one of the big pluses for M&Ms. Here, have an M&M. It's chocolate, it's everywhere, but M&Ms not so much. And it just seems kind of odd to me that they seem to make an obvious connection. Well, everybody likes it, so let's just include everybody in the scheme of characters. That's how I saw it. But
right.
I felt that it was probably, I like the actress, the comedian, Rudolph. She's very funny, and I'm sure she'll be a wonderful spokesperson. But like I said, I don't know if it was I don't know if it was the best reaction to it. I might have just said, hey, I want to just come up with a statement saying, hey, here's what we're doing. We know you like the candy. We're trying to keep it inclusive and put everybody in. There's room for all types of candy, characters.
Yeah.
I just think that should have been the statement, and they should have walked away from it. But
I agree, which was to suggest that they were afraid of the public pressure. They thought it was going to affect their money somehow. Well, something was going to happen that was going to be detrimental to the company.
Apparently, conservatives and Tucker Carlson in particular has been ranting about what's been going on with the spokes candies, and this is kind of one of the things that people are seeing as what prompted this change. He's been using his platform to speak out or against whatever they were doing, maybe adding the inclusive candies or whatnot. I think sometimes we might want to step back and not look to spokes candies to represent us. I mean, you just had candies that were representative of the candies in the bag, right? So they've added a few others. I think there's a purple one now that there's not even a purple candy in the M&M's bag. So I think it becomes a jumbled mesh when you got this culture war going on, and companies are trying to navigate these choppy waters, and
they're nervous. They're just nervous because
that's what it is.
They see this, and also they know they're coming into if you've got a choice between buying some eggs and some candy, the candy's probably going to get the short shrift. The kids want the candy, but mom and dad, they want the eggs. So they know they want to try and make as the least offensive kind of stance. But I think actually in being less offensive, at least I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, it feels a little offensive. But that's just my take on it.
It almost feels like they're insulting our intelligence.
Oh, just a little bit.
Right. And then, like you said, like they're nervous. They're not sure what to do. And then when you got someone like Tucker Carlson, who has a large audience, he's on television like every night and able to put out whatever messages he's putting out, they kind of feel, I'm sure they kind of feel like they have to do something to combat that, or to kind of heat off some of what's going on.
James in the chat says, why is M&M's giving into the right? They're always complaining. Now they're going to complain about Maya Rudolph. He also says this, how is Surfside supposed to increase their units? I grew up in Surfside. Are they supposed to build more buildings?
The answer to that is yes. They're going to build more buildings. Yep. And more than double their, they're on a footprint that's roughly the same size as, Dayton Towers, west. But they're going to have more buildings on their footprint than our west and east campuses combined. I mean, that's crazy. And, the way I see it, it's just a corporate money grab. It's the only thing. It's not for the betterment of the community. It's not for the betterment of their tenants. They don't have a terrific record as land, lords. They just don't. They've been sued just twice this year by the city, and of course that's just tort, but I mean, it's not exactly an endorsement, let's put it that way.
It's also going to potentially wreck people's views, right? Start building basically in parking lots facing people's windows.
Oh yeah. There's no upshot to this, except there is an upshot for, Alma Realty, where we're getting a lot of money. But, as I pointed out, a sneak preview of the letter that I said, I mean, cease and desist doing this and look after the people that are your charges. Like, look after your tenants. Deal with your violations first, then you build. If you're going to build, and if you're going to build responsibly.
Right. Yeah, James is going to take away parking spots. Yeah, I mean, that might be the least of it, but certainly.
Yeah, I think that's in any cases, what you said there, I think is probably a good guiding light, is to take care of your tenants first, and before you make those other decisions. And then decisions made on top of that, after that, will be, more in the right direction for anything, I think.
Yeah, work with the community also. If you're going to build, do so in conjunction with the cooperation of the community board and the local officials, and start looking at these considerations that the community has in terms of, all right, so what are we doing about schools being overcrowded or parking, or, if you're going to build, what kind of partner are you going to be to the community, and are you going to actually improve it? Are you even interested in making this better community, or are you doing it at the community's expense?
Right. I think it becomes pretty self-evident when you start looking at it on those terms. And, I don't know if any are following in, Dayton Beach Park, but I wish them the best. And I hope you have elections this year. Yes, and I hope you have a responsive board take charge and look to your needs. I think that's what you really want and need.
Absolutely. So the last topic we wanted to get into was the Florida issue. What's going on in Florida with the AP course that the governor of the state recently banned from the curriculum. It was a Black or African American Studies course, right? And if you look at what's being said, all kinds of crazy things. I mean, now he's saying that this violates state law by including critical race theory. He's saying that includes the queer theory somehow. He uses those words, queer theory. And he says that it's a violation of the law to be teaching kids this, that he says that he believes in teaching American history, but the way that they're doing this is, in his view, pushing a political agenda that the state should not be pushing, including abolishing prisons, which apparently is a part of this on some level. So should this be restricting the curriculum this way?
In part of this, in part of the plan for this AP course, this AP African American Studies course that was being proposed, there were a number of things that were included in there. One of it, what was that? Had to do with, I guess, Black queer studies, and he had issue with that because I think he labeled that somewhat indoctrination. He also said that these things, he had an issue with the intersectionality that was being introduced or discussed in here. He had issue with several things. Now, I want to be very clear in my assessment of this, because this is not the first time for DeSantis, right? The law prior banning critical race theory, even though that's not even what was being taught or what was even being proposed anywhere. This is blatant and clear racism, and DeSantis has a pattern of this, and his supporters are following, and they're complicit in this. If the Department of Education doesn't, or Board of Education doesn't fight back against this, or the College Board doesn't fight back against this, it's complicit. I would call the same thing for the Democratic Party, for the GOP as well, and any of the supporters. We're looking at a governor that is blatantly blocking the study of American history, but just history or knowledge in general, because he's already blocked critical race theory. Now this is the AP. He did the Don't Say Gay bill. This is very dangerous. And this is a problem. This should be top of mind for any of the politicians in Florida and should be very much on the radar nationally, so something like this doesn't spread and continue to go forward.
And this is an AP course, right? So my understanding is you have a choice as to whether to take that. Not every student is going to get it, right? So if they don't want to study that.
Right. And so he even cited that, I guess one of the books or one of the things that was recommended in the reading list was something by civil rights activist Angela Davis, and he called her, communist and Marxist. But whether or not that's what she believes, when has it been in the country where you couldn't study and learn about these things, right? We've had college courses that talked about communism and Marxism and any of these types of things because it was about teaching them about knowledge. And to restrict that is a very, very dangerous thing. And it's a pattern for DeSantis.
It's I teach at a college, at St. John's College at St. John's University. And one of my first things I kind of go right into is, do you know why a university is called a university? And they don't really know. I mean, they know it's a seat of learning, but they don't really know why it's called a university. And so I explained to them, it's because it comes from a root word, universalis, from New Latin. It means of all things. And from my perspective, critical race theory falls into that catch. It's of all things. If you wish to study that, why can't you study it? Like that's just, it's one of the forms of study. And if you wish to study it, you should be allowed to study it. And the fact that these were AP classes, not generalized curriculum, seems to fit that, because you're prepping for college. So it seems to me that DeSantis is kind of over isolating it, and he is certainly, I think he's probably more so playing to his base. In other words, he's ginning up support. He's looking for a national run, I think, and he's trying to become a firebrand of some sort. And this is low-hanging fruit for him, because he can easily turn opinion on it, right? And that's I think why he's doing it.
I was thinking the same thing. In fact, that was the same phrase that came to my head, playing to his base. But I just wonder how that plays if we're looking at the politics of this. Forget for a second the morality of it, but just looking at the politics, how would that play to a general election electorate in the U.S.?
It loses him in New York. but
Well, certainly New York. But even just a moderate voter in the middle of the country, I mean, that's outside the base that he's playing to. I think it's a loser politically, aside from being morally wrong.
It could be. I mean, it absolutely could be. I never really tried to suppose what other people think, but they have their own research inside of campaigns and inside of political, I guess you'd call them work groups, and they basically, or think tanks if you want, and they kind of try to gauge the mood of the electorate. Remember, this is a country that elected, Donald J. Trump. The country did that. So
right, except for the fact that every time he ran, he lost by millions of votes, so he still wasn't.
Oh yeah, but you know what I'm saying? That's what they're thinking. They're thinking that way.
Yeah.
So it's a very similar thought process, in my opinion. In terms of like the generalized curriculum, the proponents of this have said it's not in the general curriculum. And they're right about that. It is not in the general curriculum. So I don't see why everybody's up in arms over it, but he's made it an issue. And for better or for worse, it's going to hang around him. So it's going to be one of the, either in his opinion, the pluses, but in most other people's opinion, definitely I know, it'll be in the negatives.
Yeah, maybe it'll work in a Republican primary. Maybe he's trying to out-Trump Trump on that kind of thing. I just think that that's all going to come back to bite him in a general election.
In a Trump era, a post-Trump presidency era, I don't see that as a guarantee to be something that's going to be a negative against him. Like Tom said, we elected Trump. The country elected Trump, and remember, who was the candidate years back? All he did was like get excited, and he goes, "Yeah!" And like that was the end of his presidency.
Howard Dean,
right?
That was the end of his campaign. That's all he did was get a little excited, and so from there to Trump taking office with all that he said, and everyone that's come out of the woodwork that have felt emboldened by him, I don't see this being a guarantee that this is going to be a negative for DeSantis. I think it's going to be a positive for a lot of people, because he's in some of the things that he said about this, he's dividing groups to try to pull different parts, right? So he's talking about, this is an AP African American Studies course, but he's pulling out saying, oh, why is queer theory part of this? So what you're going to do is you're going to get people who are against queer studies and jump on that. He's talking about, why is they're talking about movements for Black lives included in that. So you're going to get opponents of those types of things. So you can get a few people from each of these different groups to make up a supportive group.
But you're also going to drive up turnout amongst the Black community, the gay community, and people with empathy, right? Which is a coalition comprising most of the country.
Well, you'd hope, just on the queer theory part, it's people aren't a monolith. There are a lot of people in the Black community and the Latino community and all communities that are against the movement of LGBT. And so if you pull that and say, well, this is why we're not studying it, because you've concluded studies about queer folks, then, you've got people are going to be like, yeah, that's not part of Black history. That's not my history. I'm with him on that. And now he's got supporters where he might not have had them.
Yeah, I think that worked, against a number of candidates. That exact premise worked against a number of candidates in the last election cycle. And it was incorrectly framed by their opponents, but people kind of bought it. And I agree, there is a threat there of the sort, and you dare not look away from it.
Right.
And it's cross-disciplinary too. Like, Fred Hayes, who is an African American creator at The Wave, and he does the Thor, the Hero of Rockaway. Great guy, by the way. You should read his strip. I have students who just admire his work, and they've followed it for years. And I hadn't known Fred's work till I started working with him. I mean, it's a big industry, but I started because the students kept coming to me and saying, well, I'm doing this or I'm going to this. I want to see this person at Comic-Con. And so I went and I found the most interesting panels are like there's one called it's called Afropunk. Mm. It is so good. And it goes over all of the, African-American cultural sort of touchstones. And it makes sense. Like Superman was created by two, generally speaking, kind of nebbishy guys who were being picked on. So they made Superman to support them. The African-American creators are creating similar mythologies. And it's the same kind of catharsis that they're looking for. They're looking for empowerment. Mm. And the thing is, if you don't go and look for it, if you don't open your mind to it, you won't see it. And then when you're in a classroom and you have half the class are African-American students, and you don't know this, you're not serving them well. So it's cross-disciplinary. Even in the arts, you have to keep your eyes open to it. You have to watch for it. You have to be vigilant. And like I said, it's funny. I had one student, this is the best reaction I think I've ever had. I don't know if you've ever read Preacher. It became a TV series, but it was a great comic book. And the character is Black. And he gains basically godlike power. And I was just talking about, I said, this reminded me of Preacher. And the student, who had obviously read every Preacher ever written, just he got up on his seat and he just almost was in tears. You read Preacher? Like that was important to him. Of all the things that you could have said, and those are the kinds of things that having, your eyes open and looking what other people are doing and trying to understand those points of view, that's important. Yes. Really important. And those who don't do it, you need to oppose that. Yeah, for sure.
That's a great point to make. Because we just spoke about how people are in their bubbles now and they only know their own reality. They're only looking for information that validates their own agenda, but that's not the way forward. And if we're trying to do better as a society, then we need to have more knowledge. And even if you think, for example, this course is going to teach things that you disagree with or are objectionable to, even if that's your position, it's still better to learn it, because how are you going to have a conversation? Maybe number one, you'll understand that, hey, my ideas were wrong. Or number two, at least you have more information about what's out there. And if you have your own position that's contrary to that, you can debate it and advance the dialogue in a productive way.
Right.
Oh, it's what makes us more fully human.
Right. And typically we would protect this type of discourse or this type of ideology in the halls of learning, right? That's kind of, the image has always been, especially when you get into college, it's like, this is where that's supposed to be protected, these types of learning. So it's very dangerous. It can set a very dangerous precedent to see if this, especially if this happens in other parts of the country. And DeSantis is dangerous, and he's more competent than Trump in the ways of politics and all of those things. So he could be even more of I
don't know if you're setting a high bar there, but
well, I mean, as far as knowing how politics works, I would think that DeSantis is a little bit more competent than Trump is. Trump was in there to be seen as a spectacle. It was, his full thing. This has been DeSantis's career. So he's got more experience in this realm than Trump did. So
yeah, it's a good point.
Well, we want to wrap up here in a minute. So, Jay, why don't you take a crack at the poll of the week?
What was the poll that we were going with? I
think we were going to do one on the media, but you can maybe do one on the subject as well.
Yeah, let's go on. We were talking about the media.
Okay.
Wow, what would we go there? Okay, well let's try the poll for this week. Should the media be held to a higher standard when reporting the news? I don't know. That's not a very good.
We also had a question that was kind of similar to that, right? Should they be held?
We did that already before.
Yeah.
We did that already before.
Tough one to ask because everyone's going to say yes, but the question always becomes how. Like, how does that look?
Right.
How do you make them more accountable? What do you do as opposed to should they be? It's hard to frame that in a yes/no question.
It is. And like I said, everyone's going to, or we would think that they should. It doesn't matter what your background is or what your way of thinking is. You would think you would want to get the most factual and truthful information delivered to you instead of being lied to by media, pundits, whoever it is. So that's it.
My take is that I believe that the newsrooms are somewhat decimated. They've been pared down, and because of that, they're relying on secondary sources. I mean, they're looking for headlines from Twitter. You know, think about that. Headlines from Twitter. That's really something. So I don't know. I would say should the corporations that own the media take their responsibility as stewards of our knowledge more seriously?
Sounds like a good pull to me.
Yeah.
We can just run it like that.
I like it.
I like it.
Thomas coming with the assist. And we also like to give our guests the last word here. We call it the bottom line. It came actually from Adam Clayton Powell when he was a guest on our show many weeks ago. He said the bottom line is, and he was about to say something that sounded very important, and his phone cut off. And so since then, we've been giving our guests the bottom line, and it's whatever it is. It doesn't have to be anything too deep. Whatever we talked about, or even something maybe that we didn't talk about. Whatever you want to leave our listeners and our viewers with, Thomas Kerr.
Okay.
What is the bottom line?
Well, the bottom line: look to each other, be kind, be understanding, be tolerant, and at least a little forgiving. That's my bottom line.
I like that.
I think that's excellent. That's excellent. I think we would all do well to heed those words and that way of thinking and interacting.
It's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. And I think that all goes along with our general theme this year, really, of let's do better, right? Let's strive to do better as a people. And I think that will go a long way towards achieving that. Jay, before we sign off, where can people find us?
Yes, they can find us on YouTube at Nuance Show, where we have the recordings of these discussions. If you are a podcast listener, all of the audio is going to be pushed out to wherever podcasts are. If you subscribe, they'll get automatically pushed to your device. We are up on Instagram as well. You can come through, follow, leave comments. So if you want to partake in any of the discussions, if you got any comments on anything that we've talked about, you can leave it there, Instagram and YouTube.
Sounds good. And of course, we are live on Facebook as well every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Thank you for all who tuned in and joined us and participated in the discussion. We appreciate you. As always, this has been Nuance. Thank you to Thomas. Thank you, Jay. Thank you to everyone. We've got work to do, guys. Catch you next time.
Good night, all.